Tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou katoa. Ko Dawn Marsh tōku ingoa, he kairahi ako ahau I te kura matatini o Taranaki. My name's Dawn Marsh and I'm a learning advisor at WIT in New Plymouth in Taranaki and the current secretary of ATLANS. This morning, it's my pleasure to introduce our friend and colleague from Toronto in Canada, Dr. Deena Shaffer. Deena is in her second term as president of the Learning Specialists Association of Canada, which is one of the 5 ICALD affiliated organisations with whom ATLANS has reciprocal arrangements. She is possibly best known in the international community as the co-creator of the Canadian Thriving in Action program, which focuses on the teachability and learnability of strategies from positive psychology and resilience-based learning and their application in the tertiary education sector. Deena has previously worked as a learning strategist for students with disabilities and is the manager of Thriving Innovations in Student Wellbeing at Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University. Her doctoral research focused on a biophilic approach to post-secondary learning strategies, facilitating learning through intentional time in nature. In her private practice, Awaken Learning, she focuses on nature-based pedagogy, resilience, and the intersections between learning, well-being, equity, and nature. Deena's publications include Pendulation, Awakening to Rest, published by Routledge in 2021, as well as a range of open source and peer-reviewed publications on thriving in the classroom, mindfulness practice, philosophy, feng shui, digital resources for learning and teaching, and many other topics. If there's a modern equivalent to the Renaissance man, I think it is the eclectic woman, because in addition to her busy life as an academic, a learning advisor, a holistic development mentor, Deena is also a yoga teacher. She is a mindfulness coach, a published poet, a student, and a busy mum to her 2 children. The whānau's recently been hit hard with a second bout of COVID, so being with us today is not without its challenges, and we really appreciate the time that she's given us today. It was an absolute privilege to work with Deena on the ICALD consortium in recent years and to be asked to introduce her to be one of our keynote speakers at this long-awaited ATLANS conference, Toi Tu Te Tangata. I'm very much looking forward to the wisdom and the insights she'll share with us this morning in her session, Rethinking Our Repertoires, Innovative Integrative Strategies for Student Thriving. I'm sure you're all looking forward to hearing what Deena has to say, so please join me in welcoming Dr. Deena Shaffer.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. What kindness. Dawn, you have a gift for introductions. Thank you for such a warm welcome. And to Tanya and Catherine. And there will be many more gratitudes, but also to Met and Mona. What a gorgeous way to begin. Now you have all done such an elegant way to start today. And now we just have to face this little inelegant dance as I share my screen and get things ready to go. Can you see what I see? Great. One thing I have deeply appreciated about the pandemic is the graciousness around tech fails, tech emergencies, today, this kind of not fumbling, but very emergent and honest take at rethinking what is in our repertoire as learning advisors, as tertiary advisors, as supporters of student learning, anyone who has anything to do with thinking about and making learning happen in healthful and whole ways. That's why I think I'm here, and I'm really excited to go through a little bit of a story and a little bit of a journey, and I think even more so, a little bit of an experience today. I've put a QR code. This is my, I've gone back to school, and I'm surrounded by all these design students. They really up the ante on things, so I'm certainly not 20, but I'm in a room full of them. And so I'm like, all right, well, here's a QR code. If you want to see my presentation on your phone and you want to go for a walk, like if that's helpful. And also, I just want to include here too in the chat, I have, we can make this happen too. No, I can't do well, so never mind. So here is how I like to begin. Tēnā kutu, tēnā koto, tēnā koto katua, and Morena, which is such a like a mind bend because it is evening the day before. So tell us what happens tomorrow. It's very exciting. I'm looking out my window at bare trees and hoping for and fat squirrels just about to sleep all winter. And the possibility of a scarlet red cardinal, it is quite different than the gorgeous imagery. And the only sorrow and all of the delight in planning and creating this journey today is that I don't get to go in person. You can bet I asked. You can be like, you can just know that was an email. Any chance? But indeed, I am so grateful to meet everyone here, and may we actually meet again in person sometime not so far away. Okay. I think that part of any kind of teaching or experiential journey, whether we call it a keynote or an encounter, that process is every bit as important. Process is every bit as instructive, the how we do things. So I may agitate you with how long I seemingly take to get to the heart of it, but I think this is actually the heart of it. So before we do anything, can we do a human check-in? Can you hear me okay? And can you see me okay? And if you want captions, do you have them if that's helpful for your experience of things? Has someone, I think someone's turned on the live transcript possibility. Also, like, things like water, I have a liter of it. Maybe it's the wrong question around warmth. You can tell that I am very much in a cold climate. Do you have something to keep you cool? And are you comfortable? I also include my contact information, not as self-promotion, but as I really, really, all the way in my whole body, know that you might get pulled away to make a decision, to tend to somebody you care for. You might have to put out a kind of logistical fire, and you might have to walk away from this because in all of this, the plates that you are spinning and priorities that you are holding, something may trump this moment together. So if you want to keep in touch, and I hope you do, there are many ways. And so just know that you won't hurt my feelings. I really know that lives are really messy and unwieldy. So that's a way that we can keep in touch if I don't get to see you all the way through to the end. All right. Acknowledging place is one of the most important things. And you have guided me and us through a beautiful welcome. I also want to acknowledge and thank you again, Tanya, the Indigenous Maori Iwi, first settlers of Aotearoa, and your traditions, your lands, and also my land half a world away. I acknowledge this land upon which I learn and laugh and love, and from which I take, and to which I attempt to give, and for which I am deeply thankful. Where I am meeting you from is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Okay. We are sharing some time and space together, and I am aware of what I embody. I am aware of the privilege that I am born into. I am aware of the many threads of harmful past, And I want to every day for the rest of my life participate in unlearning as much as I am learning. And it's been an interesting kind of unraveling. Some years ago, we might have said, let's create a safe space where, can everyone feel safe in what we're about to do together? And then I think there was an understanding that safety is just another imposition of privilege, that not everyone actually can feel safe, particularly folks who identify as Black, as Indigenous, as Brown, who are racialized or minoritized or marginalized in some way. So safe might not actually be the right thing at all that we're after. That comfort isn't quite right in terms of the conversation. And there was a move after that towards bravery. Can we ensure everyone's bravery? But again, that misses the mark, because as so many folks who have had harm in their lifetime and generationally, bravery is what they live. And they don't need an invitation to be brave, especially not somebody in a body like mine. I'm very interested in a movement towards accountability, of co-created accountability, where we're not imposing a norm on anyone, rules, a way of being, but that we're aware that we're kind of making up a constellation. And this notion of accountable space, this is from Elise Ahencora, and it's things like, let's check that we don't interrupt. Let's engage in self-reflection about how we share conversation, relationship, and space. That tone matters as much as words, that inquiry and clarification are really, really welcome and okay. And that maybe friction is impossible to avoid. And that's great, because we come with different histories and different stories. So, maybe that's messy, and maybe that's just more honest. And maybe there will be more iterations that are more awakened as we go. But for right now, I like this notion of together, we're going to make a space that feels one in which we're accountable for what we say and what we mean. Okay. And I can't also start without boatloads of gratitude. What an honor to be asked. Keynotes are my favorite. It's my favorite thing in the whole universe. The opportunity to make an experiential journey for other humans. That's maybe a bit of a relief or a laugh or something in your day. So thank you, Dawn. And thank you, Tanya. And thank you, Mark, because you shared stuff with me and then I shared stuff with you. And then who knows, I'm here. And thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Catherine. And I unintentionally, I don't mean to be hurtful. I'm sure there are people I've forgotten, but really the whole Atlan's conference team. And also the people who chose to come today, because I don't ever take your minutes for granted. It's the emotional labor, yes, of the folks who are hosting, because holy smoke, so much goes on behind the scenes. But also you could have said, nah, I can't engage. No more learning. Capacity done, bandwidth done, I'm out. But you came and you made a choice to engage in your community. So I'm very, very grateful. And I just don't want to mess around with a single one of your minutes, because I think they're precious. So thank you, everybody. It also wouldn't be right for me to go on here without naming who the heck I am, but not so much in titles, but in the lenses and the things that I bring, because it informs every single thing that follows. So I am a white, cisgender, heterosexual, female. I use the pronouns she and her. I was born into a mostly middle-class family here in Toronto, Canada. I've lived here all my life, mostly for caregiving reasons. I did live for a year in Valencia, Spain. You can bet I would love to come and visit you all as we head into a brutal winter. You also seem very friendly. I am a first-generation student. What else is there to share? I live with, I'm in an able body, but I live with PTSD and chronic grief and anxiety. My mother, I'm of Eastern European ancestry, primarily from Lithuania. And my mother was born in a displaced persons camp, an American Red Cross in 1945 Germany, as her mother fled pregnant. And my father was born in Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And interestingly, they both trace their lineages back to the same town in Lithuania. But on my mother's Lutheran side, it was called Kaunas. And on my father's Jewish side, it's Kovno. I went to public school, K to 12, and I went to the University of Toronto for much of my schooling. And I am a wife and a mother. And I do these things that are here. I own something called Awaken Learning, where I love to speak and train and help parents when their kids are struggling to learn and students who are struggling to learn. And I did make this thing with Dr. Deena called Thriving in Action, which has taken many different sort of tentacles and shapes and iterations over the last 5-6 years. I've been an adjunct faculty member. One of the most exciting things, and I'll loop back to this at the end, is that I'm president of LSAC. There's some other things here, but I think that's enough. I think you get a sense of who this human is in front of you today talking. My kind requests of you, there are no rules. There's only wishes. And if you could keep your audio off, mostly because it's sensory overload when someone starts talking to their kid or their dog, or like making a coffee and grinding espresso. If you can turn on your video, so many of you have, and I just think that's the kindest. I honor when that's not possible for so many reasons, but ooh, your faces make such a difference. And I will keep an eye on the chat. But, I think all of us, and it's funny because I'll get to this very strategy in a moment, but I think all of us are faced with perhaps tightened bandwidths these days after the collective trauma of a pandemic, and multitasking I don't think helps. So I'll do my best in the chat, but we'll just have like time for questions, and then we could do sort of like one thing at a time, maybe, which will be good for you and good for me. So here I was asked to come and talk about whole students and whole people. And then this email was so beautiful to use a holistic lens to build our understanding and responsiveness to students and their mental, physical, spiritual, and this, I love this notion that, I want to dive deeper, but family or community. So in relationship outside oneself, that part of the self in the learning domain, which of course, lots of us haven't met yet, but this is about my favorite question in the whole universe. This is my lifelong thing. This is my jam and my passion and my research. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life dedicated to this inquiry. So what are we going to talk about in your morning and my afternoon? We're going to do just that, of how to rethink, to reconsider what's in our repertoires when we're in work with students, which also includes our own selves in that relationship, for their thriving and our own, because certainly none of what we do should come at the expense of our own well-being. And we'll do this by the very query that was posed to me. How do we tend to the mental self, to the physical, to the spiritual, to those family and community circles outside? And then there'll be time to wrap up with gratitude and questions. The first thing I need to do, again, right? I said there was the possibility I would really agitate you to no end, because process for me is really important, as important. I don't want to just dive into some stuff, because maybe you have stuff here and stuff here that's going on for you that might make it hard to receive. And so I love this practice of top of mind and top of heart. So whether it's in a journal, if you have one, I don't know if you all got swag today. I don't know how online can do swag, but like a piece of scrap paper will do just fine. Or you're just a quiet contemplative moment, is just to consider what is most present and most alive for you right now. Because you're here, but I also really accept you might not be able to be all the way here. So we'll just take a minute, and we won't share them. It's totally private. But what is top of mind and top of heart for you? You're welcome to share it in the chat. If you're an extrovert, go for it. But it's also just a moment for you. Okay. It isn't about clearing the decks. I think clearing the decks is a bit artificial. I think that's a bit much. I think it's impossible. But I do think it's about making a little bit more space, intentional space, of how we can kind of step into more formally talking about strategies and practicing some, and also honoring that you might be caregiving, you might be recovering, you might be worried, you might be grieving, you might be celebrating, you might be distracted by 15 things. And all of that is welcome because it's here anyways. All right. Let's tend to the mental self. And as you know, and as I know, and as you live, and as I live, these aren't separate. They're interrelated. It's but a constraint so we can share little morsels of experiences. But of course, we experience the mental, the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the family and community often as a blend. But here are just some kind of like a amuse-bouche, like tastes of things that we can do for ourselves and with our students. So the first thing I would love if you do is grab a piece of paper. It doesn't have to be fancy. It can be lined or unlined. It can be, I don't know, some empty space on a newspaper. Anywhere where you can draw 2 horizontal lines. Ideally, the first line is a third of the way from the top. And the second line is 2/3 from the top. Oh my gosh, I see other people in their office totally making you go get paper. Thanks, student learning committee over there. Sorry about that. I should have made a list of like things to bring. Snacks, paper. Okay, so here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take a moment and check in. And how's your sense of focus? Your single-mindedness, you're kind of like, yeah, I'm with it, I'm here. How's your body? How's your heart, the tempo of your breathing? Just like a quick body scan and a mind scan. Because we're going to do something. All right. So first, I need you to, as quickly as possible, on the top line, write out, I am a great multitasker. And on the bottom line, I need you to write out, it has to be legible. It doesn't have to be gorgeous, but it has to be legible. The numbers 1 through 20. As quickly as you can. We're going to kind of let neatness go a bit for the sake of time. If you could give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Whoa, Tanya, you're fast. Jeepers. Okay, so on the top line, you've written as quickly as possible, I'm a great multitasker. And on the bottom, 1 through 20. All right, don't worry if you're not finished because you needed scrap paper. Okay, deep breath. You need another paper. Maybe I should have made that clear if you just got up and went to another room. You can use the backside, don't worry, don't panic. I need you to draw those same horizontal lines. And then brace yourself. Okay. We're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to work on 1 digit at a time, doing 1 item from the top list on the top line, then an item from the bottom. So I, and then to the 1, and then the A from am, not the whole word, and then down to the 2, and then the M from multitasking to the 3. Go fast now. And give me a thumbs up when you're done. Or if you've just opted out. I'm not judging anyone who opts out. Don't worry. Okay. Okay, perfect. So in the chat, can you share What was that like the second time? Do a check-in with your body, that same scan, and share your experience. What's the quality of your writing? What was the quality of your experience? And I don't get to see chat for some reason, which is a bummer. Can I have someone, Tanya or Don, can I have you read them out? I can't see them. I'm not unable to see them.
So someone said it was confusing, definitely more brain effort, slower, starting to feeling a little bit anxious or a little bit rushed. The quality of the writing was poorer. So some people said it looks like a 7-year-old wrote it. Yeah, a little bit frustrating. Some people gave up and felt they had to be more focused.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I love that you just described the breadth of our student experience. So to repeat back, so I'm frustrated, I'm getting anxious, the quality of my work is going down. Like, I know I need to be more focused. I give up. Yeah, what a legitimate response. And is this not just a tiny compressed, and sorry, I don't want to ever make anyone feel anxious. So we're going to stop, and don't worry, we're going to do some restorative, reparative work, but
that's okay. Some people enjoyed the challenge.
Oh, good. That to honor that is what our students are experiencing and what we're experiencing, that pulled attention in every direction, and then what ripples from that. So I think the connections are clear. But what I want to propose is the potential for how we can restore and repair some of that mental exhaustion, that anxiety, when we are feeling pulled. So that tending to the mental self. Sometimes we can do breath work, and sometimes we can say things like, we'll just push through it. That's not my favorite sentence. I'm interested in, the question we've asked is, how do we tend to that? How do we actually heal that when we feel like we're experiencing fragmented focus? One way that isn't often talked about, but that I am absolutely besotted with, is awe, the intentional incorporation of awe. Awe has a kind of multidimensional impact on our physiological resilience. The kind of physiological markers of inflammation decrease, our capacity for connection with humanity, our sense of spaciousness with time grows. And so, of course, in a tiny talk where I've likely just packed too many things, we won't go into all of the details. So why don't we actually experience awe for a moment? It is my desperate wish that you can hear this. So I'm going to, fingers crossed. Can you hear sound? Yes. Would you be willing to share some words in the chat for me about how you're feeling now?
We did lose sound through the middle there, Deena, but we had sound at the beginning and sound at the end. And actually the contrast between the sound and the silence was quite lovely. And some people are saying that they preferred the quiet imagery. A lot of people are saying some of the scenes remind us very much of our own country of Aotearoa, so the mountains, the forests, just those big skies and stars. People found it uplifting, relaxing, reminding them to just take a moment and breathe again. Feelings of calmness, being at peace, and just that sense of wonder at the beauty of the world.
Thank you so much. So I'm sorry, because I can't see the chat. I apologize that you lost sound. That's a bummer. And also I love that you kind folks saw the kind of glass half full and experienced the poignance of silence. This is out of Berkeley, the Awe Project, out of the Greater Good, the Greater Good Center out of Berkeley, and the research they do there. And in what they're trying to do is, in a sense, make awe an equitable experience. Not everyone can go and visit Yosemite. But it turns out that even an experience like this, a digital one, a handful of minutes, 4 minutes, can have the same impact. Identical, perhaps not identical. But what a relief, because it's not about an extraordinary expense. It's not about the luck of who gets to engage. And so what would it mean to offer to our students and to ourselves intentional encounters of awe? And particularly as one way of tending to the mental self. And what about the physical self? It was mentioned that I have been writing on pendulation, this underlying movement that is in our, not just our bodies, but in our existence. We can feel that there is a rhythm when we inhale and exhale of expansion and contraction. But that underlies so much of our experience. In fact, this notion of pendulation, the movement of a pendulum, underlies our fundamental kind of nervous system response. And the key is not that we remain restful all the time, nor is it to kind of denigrate or put down when we're stressed, when we're activated, when we're mobilized, but to have movement between. That is the great hope, is to tap into our bodies, kind of pendulating movement, and ensure we're not stuck in one place or another. So I like to connect this languaging of pendulation with polyvagal, the conception of polyvagal, or I like to think of it as polyvagal pedagogy. And I don't want to assume that this is new. Maybe some of you are very, very experienced around the vagus nerve and its presence and all that we do. It permeates our entire lives. But very simply, so you can, on the left hand there, here is this nerve that quite literally connects brain to body. It is the longest nerve in our body. And vagus comes from the word vagabond, like wandering nerve. And it is, this is so touching to me, and that nerve that connects brain to our gut. It is, in a way, why we can sense things and we sense danger, and that vigilance, where that comes from a little bit, helps us understand that like uncanny wisdom of the body. And what it also allows us, if we go into this polyvagal pedagogy, it helps us not just take a, sometimes the language is a trauma informed or trauma sensitive approach. It's like a real trauma awake understanding when we are in an encounter with our students or with each other. And I think that there's no more relevant conversation right now, it's not post-pandemic, like in the throes of who knows what stage of the pandemic. And our relationship to being hypervigilant for 3 years, scanning for danger. And so this notion of polyvagal, this comes from Stephen Porges and also Deena, and pendulation, that's Peter Levine, his work around trauma. What all of this comes together is actually complicates when we talk about the nervous system. Sometimes we think of it as, okay, we have a sympathetic response, and that's when we're like activated. We like, oh, there's danger, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. But it's not only that, it's also sometimes what happens when that's not even possible, when we are isolated, when we have totally shut down. Think of how many students you've worked with, when in fact mobilized is not even where we are. We have really shut down. And when we're connected, when we're feeling able to interact, when I can communicate clearly and identify what I'm feeling, when I'm feeling not restful, sleepy, but restful, calm, and not on high alert, that's that parasympathetic response, that sort of vagus nerve, that vagal tone. And so I bring all of this up because it is with us in all of our interactions with students and each other, whether we're aware of it or not. And so what can we do about it? How do we tend to the physical self when all of this is at play all of the time? We can certainly watch for when our students are always stressed or quite often in that immobilized state, because what we want to do is that pendulation between states. We need to be stressed sometimes. I need to be a little bit stressed when I'm giving a keynote. It helps me find my words. It helps me perform better, right? We also need to know what to do afterwards, how to have that cup of tea, have that embrace, have that way of kind of calming and tending and nourishing that nervous system response. One way we can do that is the wisdom of restorative yoga. So I want to just briefly share about this particular posture. It's the wisdom of restorative yoga. That's Judith Lassiter. My own training in this is from Scott Davis. And it's essentially practicing ease of the body. Now, why this posture? This is a person lying down with their legs on the chair. What's so restorative about that? If you notice, this person is lying where the back of their head is on the ground, and so is their sacrum, the back of the pelvis. And those two places are where that parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, that, we can pendulate away from times of stress into that alert calm. It's where the parasympathetic nervous system innervates. And so when we put pressure, when we put weight and gravity on those two places, we can stimulate the parasympathetic response. This is a posture that is known for tending to trauma in the body. All places are being held. They're being held. So to get into this, just make sure that the back of your neck is supported, not with a high pillow that gives you sort of too much height there. Very, very flat with potentially a little roll under the neck for support. The weight of your body doing its thing, and then your calves on a chair. And if you can stay there for 3 minutes or 6 minutes, get a blanket over top. I recommend this to my students all the time, both at Toronto Metropolitan University and my private clients, as a way to, because so many of them can't. They're stuck in always on. They're stuck in adrenaline mode. They're stuck in, but I have an exam tomorrow and I have an exam after that. And it's just production. When do we pendulate? When do we exhale after so long of inhale? When do we unclench after so much clenching of our jaw and our solar plexus, our abdomen, our forehead. When do we? So this is one posture to be able to do that. Tending to the spiritual self. So a very kind human in this world is Linda Graham. I don't know if you know her work, Resilience 2.0, Bounce Back. She wrote to me one day, she spoke it, and then I was so in love and teary. I was like, please, can I have these words again? So it's not just a fleeting spoken thing. I want to know them. I want to really, really know them and say them again. She offered me this, and it reminded me how opposite this is to starting the day with, I got to look at my phone. What have I got on? Like, what if, as a way of tending to our spiritual self, we intentionally greeted the day? This is how Linda Graham greets the day. She says to herself, may this moment of wise effort be focused and disciplined, creative and productive, truthful and useful, courageous and persevering. May I not miss this day. May I enjoy the process, resting in trust, love, and joy. May I meet my deadlines. May I bring full compassion when I fail. And I wonder if we can have in our repertoires to our students the question of, yes, I'm here to help you with this study schedule. I'm here to help you with time management. I'm here to help you with how you take notes. How do you start the journey of every day? Because you are more than a machine that just goes to classes and does all of the assignments. When do you get to actually practice and tend to your humanity? When do you get to do more than just produce more and produce more and produce more and put a portfolio together and put a lab report together? And so in sister to this, I think of this kind of as two parts of tending to the spiritual self. So, one is kind of entering the day, but the other one is how we find and notice delight throughout our day. And sometimes they're really small because the big day feels really hard. But not just moments of gratitude, because I think that can turn some students off. It's gorgeous. Gratitude is so important. And there's so much research about gratitude as a kind of antidote or first line response to depression. But I sometimes like to keep things super simple. And what if it's just about a moment of delight? And may we not forget that capacity. So I want to play this, and oh my gosh, I hope that it plays. If not, please let me know and we'll problem solve together. Can you hear?
I am Ross Gay, and I'm here to talk to you about or read from this book that's coming out February from Algonquin Books. One day I was walking up a hill in Umberto Day in Italy, and there were like bees in these linden trees, and there were flowers all over, sunflower fields, and I was like, well, this is so delightful. I should write an essay about this. And then I said, well, it'd be more interesting if I wrote an essay every day for a year about this. More challenging too. And so the book is kind of like an artifact of that exploration, and it kind of ends up being a kind of treatise on delight and the virtues and the labor of delight. So I'm going to read to you a few of them quickly. This one's called Tomato on Board. It's number 80. Tomato on Board. What you don't know until you carry a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane is that carrying a tomato seedling through the airport and onto a plane will make people smile at you almost like you're carrying a baby, a quiet baby. I did not know this until today, carrying my little tomato, about 3 or 4 inches high in its 4-inch plastic starter pot, which my friend Michael gave to me, smirking about how I was going to get it home. Something about this at first felt naughty, not comparing a tomato to a baby, but carrying the tomato onto the plane. And so I slid the thing into my bag while going through security, which made them pull the bag for inspection. When the security guy saw it was a tomato, he smiled and said, "I don't know how to check that. Have a good day." But I quickly realized that one of its stems, which I almost wrote as arms, was broken from the jostling, and it only had 4 of them. So I decided I'd better just carry it out in the open. And the shower of love began. Before boarding the final leg of my flight, one of the workers said, "Nice tomato," which I don't think was a come on. And the flight attendant asked about the tomato at least 5 times, not an exaggeration, every time calling it my tomato. "Where's my tomato? How's my tomato? You didn't lose my tomato, did you?" She even directed me to an open seat in the exit row. "Why don't you guys go sit there and stretch out?" I gathered my things and set the little guy in the window seat so she could look out. When I got my water, I poured some into the little guy's soil. When we got bumpy, I put my hand on the little guy's container, careful not to snap another arm off. And when we landed and the pilot put the brakes on hard, my arm reflexively went across the seat, holding the little guy in place, the way my dad's arm would when he had to brake hard in that car without seatbelts to speak of, and one of my very favorite gestures in the Encyclopedia of Human Gestures.
That last line just about does me, and I think it's so beautiful. That's Ross Gay. He's an American poet. And there's something about that poem that just makes my heart burst every time. And so when I work with students, and as I work with their parents, or as I work with administrators, it's not that I don't want to ask the question, what are you grateful for? But I can't ask that anymore, not right now, because there are some students and some colleagues who have lost so much that it's not the right question. The question can be a little bit affronting. And so in that way that we build rapport and relationship with students, I ask, what has delighted you in this day? Has there been any moment of delight? Which feels to me a little bit easier to get into. The stakes don't feel quite as high. The expectation doesn't feel quite as high, because sometimes it can be really hard to be grateful when things feel bleak, when things feel burdensome. And what about tending to the family and community self? So I want to share with you a strategy called the Life Report. And this is from my now friend, Dr. Sia Verschelden, who was, I don't know if you kind folks ever come to my e-keynotes. Like a few years ago, I started these free talks, equity guided talks for the LSAC, Learning Specialist Association of Canada folks, but like you folks come to it and everybody's invited. It's a learning party once a month. And Sia came, and so she is a scholar and higher ed administrator entirely devoted to equity in education. And she was the vice president of academic and student affairs at Malcolm X College in Chicago. So she came up with this. And the Life Report is quite simply a story of your life in 20 pictures. And the presentations are done in 20 slides and 20 seconds per slide, and that there's only pictures and no more than 2 pictures per slide. And why does this matter? Why is this not the same thing as a Pechakucha or something? She has her students do this in class. She has her students do this in interaction with her. Why? Because it prioritizes their knowledge. It prioritizes the font of wisdom that they inhabit, that they embody. It prioritizes all of the things that they know. And for us, the relevance is all the things that they know about how they best learn, about where the intersections are between their lived experience and the learning journey that they're on. So I've done this a little bit. Don't have 20. I just have 5. And so I want to share with you my Life Report. So this is a book of poetry that I wrote called The Grey Tote. And I wrote it, and it was published in 2014. And this was the first poem from it that was ever published several years prior out of a university here called Dalhousie University. And I wrote it after both my parents died of cancer when I was in my mid-20s. And it was a way that through the the focusing and the tightness of language, I could articulate something of my experience of grief. I know bereavement and grief in every cell of my body, and it was a way that I could shape something of that articulation. This is my really, really lovely and extra kind husband, Andrew. This was when we, shortly after my mom had died, which was shortly after my dad had died, we moved to Spain. And we moved to Spain in some ways so that I wouldn't have to drive by the nearby hospital and relive and walk by every neighborhood and have everything feel so much. I was the primary caregiver to both of them. We intentionally walked into teaching in Spain into a year of beauty. We surrounded ourselves in beauty. And so there we are in Mallorca. And wow, we look very young. We look pre-pandemic, we all look pretty good. I'm less burdened. These are the two humans we made. And one is turning 10 in 2 weeks, and the other one is 7. And this is us when our house was full of toxic mold and we had to leave it and we had nowhere to go. And a friend of ours lent us their trailer home on the outskirts of Grand Bend in southern Ontario, the province I am in. And that is that lake? That's Lake Huron, in a very still moment. And these 3 pieces, I know, COB so mad, only 2 photos, but the Thriving in Action was a real career highlight for me. Creating something that felt useful to students, to serve as a stepping stone for students, is all that I've ever really wanted to be. And when I was voted into my first term as president for LSAC, it meant that my way of being, my way of unsiloing the emotional self and physical well-being, and all of that I knew and practiced around academic tenacity and skill building, it meant that there was a place for that. And that felt like such recognition and such an affirming moment. And then awakened learning when I woke up one day and said, well, I am not born from a business family and I don't know much about much, but I'm starting my own business. That really felt like a moment too. So I encourage you all to contemplate what your 20 slides would be, or what your 4 would be, and what the equivalent might be in your work with students, to engage and ask for the deep wisdom that your students know and what they can share with you about their lived knowledges, their family knowledges, their community knowledges, and how to put those front and center. They're such assets. And so, I was asked to come and speak about whole students, which is really the story of the whole, all of us. And, it was briefly mentioned, my own journey, my personal journey to this moment is I've been sick for 3 weeks with my second bout of COVID. And then I got a secondary virus, and then I got a cold sore, which sort of has eaten up my whole face. And also, my background is so plain because I'm now in what was like the cold storage room, because it's my elder one's 10th birthday in 2 weeks. She said, I want my own room. She said she and her little sister have shared a room and a bed for all of their lives. And it was time when I turned 10, I'd like my own space, which has meant us painting the rooms and us moving everything around. We don't have a big space. And so that's also been part of my experience. And thinking about sicknesses, caring for my children because we all got COVID together. My daughter went back after 2.5 weeks away from school, trying to arrange this present of a room that's with me as I'm here with you today, just as your students are embodying the caregiving, the working, the pregnancy, the lost pregnancy, the hope of admission somewhere, a declined letter, financial burden, food insecurity. It's all with us all of the time, in them and in us. And so I want to leave you, but I don't have time. So I'm going to send you as a follow-up the most beautiful song in the whole world, which is, at the very least, may we keep going in a kind of shared messiness and shared humanity. And the offerings today have been a kind of honoring to all the parts of ourselves and to the wholeness of all of our students and the whole beings that we're in professional and personal relationships with. And so you might go like, well, okay, that's great. That's like a whole bunch of stuff, Deena. What's the point? I think the point is it's what we punctuate our days with, you know, and it's how we hold our wholeness. And that wholeness that's in those that we encounter. And it's in the small offerings, like the small moments of delight, the small moment of awe that we can give to ourselves and to each other. My questions to you are really about how are you feeling? It's not a question you need to answer. I'm aware of time, but I do wish for you to ask yourself, how are you feeling right now? And maybe that is an inquiry about what you might offer to your students or what you might hold close from today. What might you offer to your colleagues who weren't present? Or what might you reflect upon this evening? We'll take questions in a moment, and any of your feedback is all of it's welcome. I want to say matewa and tēnā koto, tēnā koto, tēnā koto katoa, and we end as we begin. And all the thank yous, all of them. Thank you, everybody, so much for your kind presence and your big hearts. It's such a gift. And now I have to catch up on 70 messages because I didn't have access to the chat, but now I do. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Deena. I'll leave it to the chat for the questions because I am just conscious of time. Thank you so much for the insights you've shared with us this morning, and what a wonderful way to open our conference today. I think I was very moved by the lessons you've shared about gratitude and graciousness and consciousness and showing appreciation for the people, for the land, for the opportunities we have to learn and to unlearn. You've given us a lot of moments to reflect on process and on how we do things and the very human pressures that we and our students all embody. I think that I was very moved by your words about taking time for awe and for delight and to bring calm to the chaos so that we're able to manage our physical, our mental, our spiritual and our family and community selves. I, in the past year and a half, moved to Taranaki from Hamilton, and one of the things that brings me great joy every day is the mountain here, Taranaki Maunga. Some days it's hiding, some days it has snow, some days it is beautiful, crisp and clear, and some days it just has amazing cloud formations around it. It's just a thing of beauty and wonder, and I start my day and end my day wondering what the Maunga will bring today. So thank you very much for making us aware that taking time to reflect and taking time to take care of ourselves matters, and it matters for our students as well, and that rapport, those relationships, the delight engagement that we bring, and the knowledge that we have of others and that we share with others is an important part of our practice. And it's often that unacknowledged bit of our practice that we have to manage every day, the sharing, the caring, and the I guess taking care of ourselves that can sometimes be something that we lose focus on. So thank you again for such a wonderful, wonderful presentation on thriving, which I'm sure will have inspired so many of our members for our work next year and beyond. And we do absolutely hope that one day in the near future you'll be able to join us and present in person, because always that very human connection is so much more real. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Unfortunately, speaking of pressures, our internet host is experiencing some outages beyond our control, so there may be some disruptions to our program today. Please keep checking the Padlet, which I'll just put the link up in the chat for updates. If we have any information, we will pop those in the Padlet so that you can see that, or I'll send it out to you via email. We're breaking for morning tea now, so please feel free to grab some refreshments and join us in Aruma Wha for our coffee lounge, although I might just try that yoga pose for a little wee moment first. We have 3 streams running at 10:30. The wellbeing strand is going to run here in Ruma Tahi, academic writing is in Ruma Rua, and online learning is in Ruma Toru. So thank you again, Deena, for sharing your way of working and your words and wisdom today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. Kia ora.